Don't laugh. Your brother might be president someday. Okay. One day, who knows what happens? Because somebody used their tongue in a right way and changed. It might be little, and you might think what I'm saying doesn't mean, but it changes the course, and something great happens. Not only is it little, but it's huge in its impact. Because it has the power to affect people, it also has the power to destroy. And this is too often what happens. In verses 5 through 8, you see how destructive it is. It says the tongue is a little member. Again, it says the same thing about it being little, but directing a horse in a ship. He says in verse 6 here, he says, in verse 5, he says, it is a little member and boasteth great things. Behold, how great a matter a little fire kindleth. He says, a tongue is a fire, a world of iniquity. So the tongue is among our members, that it defiles the whole body, that it defileth and setteth on fire the course of nature, and is set on the fire of hell. He says, every kind of beast, and of birds, and of serpents, and of things in the sea is tamed, and hath been tamed by mankind, yet but the tongue no man can tame. It is an unruly evil, full of deadly poison. And isn't that the truth? You know, when we realize how powerful our tongue is, it has the power to devastate people. You know, the same thing that we say that Mike can use great power to change one of those little lives there in his Sunday school class. You know what? Saying one thing can also devastate one of those kids. You're stupid. You'll never learn anything. Boom. And what might become the President of the United States is going to end up in front of Robbie at the Lubbock County Jail. One little word. Stupid. We could think about the little words that hurt us. We could think that you're ugly, fat, ugly, stupid. And we all know them because we heard them growing up. Yet unfortunately, guess what? It doesn't change. Times don't change. I guarantee even back in biblical times, people were using their tongue to do what? Hurt others. Because it's a little thing, it's a fire, and it just spreads. Boom. We need to think about our families and our kids. How that tongue hurts. In our wives and our husbands. Man, we could say something, and if we've lived with our spouses long enough, let's be honest, we know where they're weak. We know where to get them when we need to. Both ways. The spouse, that we have couples that are smiling. You know. Okay? The husband knows the weakness of the wife. The wife knows the weakness of the husband. Well, if we're honest, we even know where we could hurt our kids. And so what we do is we use that tongue to hurt somebody when we need to. And we might use all sorts of excuses. Well, I had a rough day at work. And I'm not saying you didn't. I'm not saying you didn't. I'm not saying you're having struggles at work. I'm not saying you're not, you didn't have a rough day. I'm sure you did. But it still gives you no right to come in and attack your spouse. Gives you no right to hurt your kids. Our tongue, it's just a little fire. And you know what? I like the idea used there over the fire. Because we've all been, or if you've ever been around a wildfire, it's quite a sight. Now, for some time, you might know what I'm talking about. I was in Southern California for about 13 years. And I will never forget when Orange County had a large fire down by Laguna Niguel, or Laguna Beach. And I can remember how you would go and you could see it from the 405 freeway, and you would see these little fires, and it would just, as it would creep up a hill, it would go real slow. But when it crested the hill, man, it got the wind behind it, and it was an inferno. And it would just rush down the hill. And it would destroy everything in its path. I don't care what was there. I don't care if the fire department was there. You know, when that fire started going and started getting hot and started moving, all they would do is get back as far away from the fire and try to do a big fire break, because there was no way they could stop it. No way they could stop it once it started moving, once it started going downhill. Guess what our tongues do? We might say something, and it might be that slow burn. Things begin to eat on us. And things begin, and it's just that we start saying things, and we start saying mean things, and it's just like a slow fire building steam as it gets up to the top. And then pretty soon, guess what happens? Boom. And it becomes out of control. We start saying ugly stuff, mean stuff, hateful stuff. And you know what? You might go after you say some of that stuff, and you might go and say, oh, I am so sorry. Oh, Mike, I'm so sorry. I should have never said that. But guess what? The fire already did what? Boom, it already went down. And you could say you're sorry, and you could genuinely be sorry. But it's already been said. It's already gone. It's already done its destructive business. As he says there, talks about it being a fire. Talks it being a beast, a wild animal. You know, we can go and you can look at in the zoos, and my kids used to love going to the zoo. Talks about the animals there, verse number 7. My kids used to love to go to the zoo. And when we were living in New Mexico, my parents lived in Albuquerque, so we'd take them to the Albuquerque Zoo, which really is, you can look online, it is one of the best zoos in the country. It's a great zoo. They have all sorts of things. And we would take them to the zoo, and you go and you look at those animals in those cages. You've got that lion there pacing back and forth. And you go and you can go to another cage, and you can see that wolf, and they're all just kind of laying there, helpless. And you think, oh, look at that tiny little animal. That tiny little animal isn't mean. But the minute you put her on the back row by his neck, you can go, and guess what happens? You take that animal out of that cage. Guess what? And it's a killer. It's a killer. Our tongues are that way. Now, when they're under control, they can be nice. Under control, it's okay. Man, get it out and let it start flapping. It can kill you. It's a poison. Medicines, we could talk about medicines. Great illustration. Penicillin's mold. Okay, you think a mold is being something bad. In a right form, guess what? Then it'll cure an infection. Wrong form, it'll do what? It'll kill you. Our words can be so powerful because they can direct, but they're so destructive if we leave it out of control. So not only does it have the power to direct somebody and move something, it's got the power to destroy. It also has the power to delight. And you look at verses, as we look at verses 9 down through verse number 12, talks about the blessings that we can give God. In verse number 11, it talks about the fountain bringing forth water. In 12, the fig tree and the berries and the vines. It's got the power to delight. But the tongue is that strange mixture. It's the mixture of good and evil, unfortunately. And so I go back to what we started with in the introduction. It's what we are inside. It's what we are inside. If I were to go back, as I said, I want you to think about this past week. How was your conversations this past week? Not with stranger on the street. Because most of the time, most of us have enough sense. To the stranger on the street, guess what? We will always be, for the most part, pretty polite. And if you're not, that's another problem, another sermon. Okay, not being a good witness. But I want you to think about the people that are close to you. The ones you come in contact with every day. Whether it's your spouse or your kids, whether it's your teachers and your parents, whether it's your friends, the people we come, co-workers, the people we come in contact with every day. What's coming out of your mouth? Is it the mixture between, James is clear, he says they both comes out. But I wonder how often what we say is the wrong thing. Is the wrong thing. It's the mean stuff, the angry stuff. It amazes me sometimes to hear. You know, we got new foster kids, and every foster kid is a sermon illustration. It amazes me what comes out of kids. And what you hear, what they heard. The people that are closest to you are the ones that really know you. They're the ones that really see you. And you know what? They know you better than anybody else. How are you communicating with them? Because that's the key. There shouldn't be this, well, some days I'm good, some days I'm bad. It shows us what we are. Now, I want you to go back to Psalms. We're going to look at just a couple things to help what I'm saying here. I'm going to get some advice from David. Let's go to Psalms 19:4 first off. You might say, well, I had a rough week, Brother Bygel. I really said some things I shouldn't say. I was really mean. I was really hateful. And it came out. Well, David has some great advice for us. First one is found in verse number 14 here, Psalms 19. He says, let the words of my mouth and the meditations of my heart be acceptable in my sight, O Lord, my strength and my Redeemer. Now, the first thing I want you to notice there's the connection between the heart and the words again. But what does he say? He was constantly aware that God heard everything he says, and God knows what's in his heart. God heard everything we say and knows what's in our heart. And so the first thing that I would encourage you to do tomorrow or this afternoon, before you say anything, obviously I want you to think about what you're going to say. But realize this. God hears what I'm going to say. God hears what I'm going to say. God knows what's in my heart. And so as I begin to think about that, and as he said earlier, 39, while he mused, while he thought it over, that's when he began to think after he thought. So think about that thought. God hears me. God hears me.